Hey guys, Kaylee Jean here with Falcons and Pentacles Tarot, and today I wanted to make a really quick video about how to tell the difference between fear and impulses and your actual intuition. So we all kind of have this idea that we want to have a strong connection with our intuition and be able to make decisions in a way that feels very in alignment and that feels like we don't have to think too much. We just trust our gut, and we love that feeling when you trust your gut and you make a decision and it ends up being right and your intuition was correct. That's one of the best feelings. But when you are struggling in indecision because you can't tell the difference between, let's say, a fear or an impulse, or if it's an actual intuitive hit, that can be really frustrating. And that can be one of the most frustrating feelings that you can have. So especially as creative people and entrepreneurs and people who kind of put ourselves out there, this is a big one. And it's something that I get a lot of questions about. So today I just wanted to share with you guys my personal experience with these three kind of ways of receiving information or ways of reacting to a situation, and in hopes that it might clarify some things for you. You guys might have different experiences from me, so keep that in mind. But the first one that I would talk about is fear, because it's the biggest one, and it's really the one that gets us hung up most of the time, if we're honest. So fear, to me, the way that I tell if something is fear as opposed to intuition is that fear feels contractive to me in my body. So when I go into a state of fear, or when I'm thinking about doing something that will get me out of my comfort zone, and my initial reaction is to say no to that, it's usually accompanied by a feeling of tension, usually in my chest area, my solar plexus also. So that's kind of one defining factor that I look for is, am I feeling it here? Is my heart beating faster? Do I feel tightness or tension in my chest? The other thing with fear is that it tends to separate your kind of body sensations. And so I'll try and explain that in the best way possible. When I go into fear, or when I feel fear, I'll feel like a slight, it's very subtle. I have to become still in order to feel this and be aware of it. But I'll feel a separation between, like, almost like my head and my body in a way, where the energy kind of, there's a blockage here, and then my body is kind of, I'm not paying attention to the sensations, so I have to really get in my body and feel if I have tightness around my shoulders, around my chest, and if my heart's beating fast, like all of those things will indicate to me that the reason that I'm saying no, or the reason that I'm pulling back, is actually not intuition, it's fear, and that is keeping me in my comfort zone. That's my, physiological reaction to being about to break through a personal boundary or a limitation, or getting out of my comfort zone. So it's definitely one of the most common things, especially for creative people. Fear is something that you're going to deal with on a daily basis. So being able to identify it is a really big strength and a huge plus for you as you kind of create things in the world and share the gifts that you have. You're always going to come up against fear. So the other thing about fear that is kind of a defining factor for me is I ask myself, are the thoughts that I'm thinking right now as I'm in this fearful state, are the thoughts that I'm thinking focused kind of inwardly? Are they focused on me? Because that's the thing, is fear often gives you thoughts that are very self-absorbed, honestly, and they're very, they're repetitive and familiar. So if your fearful thoughts, they're gonna feel familiar. They're gonna sound like the same things you've been criticizing yourself about, or worrying about, preoccupying yourself over for years and years, oftentimes since childhood in one form or another, you have these repetitive thoughts of, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not good at public speaking. I've never been good at public speaking, so I can't get up and give that talk. Like, I just can't do it. Like, no, I have to say no. Or I can't do that interview because no, I'm terrified. I've always been bad at public speaking. See, these are fear thoughts because they're very self-absorbed and they're pointing at you, pointing inwardly at you, and especially they're noticing things that you would describe about yourself as flaws in a way. So fearful thoughts are self-absorbed. They point inward. Fear energy is contractive. So you'll feel contraction, in your shoulders, in your chest. That's my experience. The second one that I want to talk about is impulse. So emotional impulses. These are definitely emotional kind of experiences. Similar to fear, an impulse, though, will be less physical in my experience and more on the emotional level, the level of the emotional body. And with impulse, the thing to do, because it can be very hard to kind of discern from a fear thought or from an intuition. Emotional impulses tend to have urgency. That's one thing that I notice is if I have an impulse that's coming from my emotional body, it's not coming from my intuition, I will feel like I need to do this thing right now, even though there's not really any reason. Like, I could easily put this thing off for a couple of days and see how I feel after a couple of days. But the emotional impulse thing, it wants you to just take action right now. So let me think of an example of where that could come up. Well, you could be having an impulse to call someone who you haven't talked to in a long time, but then another part of you is thinking, well, usually when I talk to that person, the reason I haven't talked to them in a while is because they're difficult and because we tend to have a lot of disagreements and because they tend to bring a negative kind of energy to their interactions. And so there's all these things where, like your logic kind of knows that this person may not be the best person to interact with, which is why you've pulled away. You might get an emotional impulse. You might be triggered by something. You might get a feeling of nostalgia, an emotional feeling of nostalgia. And you're like, oh, I have to call that person. I need to hear from them. Your logic is going to come in and be like, that might not be the best thing, but your, impulsive emotion comes in and just kind of says, it overrides it. So a lot of times what'll happen is you'll have that feeling that it's not going to be the best outcome, but your impulsiveness takes over and you call that person and then you get in an argument or, it doesn't have a positive outcome. And so then that wasn't intuition, it was an impulse. The best thing to do that I've found for, emotional impulses is just waiting. If you feel a strong sense of urgency to do something and you don't need to do it right away, like there's not a deadline, there's not a reason that, you would have to do it right away. Just put it off for a few hours, put it off till the next day and see how you feel. Give it a little bit of time to get centered. And a lot of times you'll see that the impulse changes if you don't indulge it. If you don't indulge the impulse, then, it'll kind of transition into something else, or you'll realize that, that impulse wasn't in your highest interest, So that's the impulse level of things, which can be hard, in the beginning to discern between impulse and intuition. The last one obviously would be intuition, and intuition is really hard to explain, partly because everybody feels it differently, and we develop our intuition. It's not something that everybody feels in the same way. It's really about developing that relationship and kind of paying attention, to how guidance comes through for you, how it feels when you have an intuitive hit. you trust it, and then you end up being totally confirmed and validated that that was the right decision. You got to pay attention when that happens, so get your journal out at the end of the day and think about, what did that feel like in your body? Where did you get that sensation? For me, I will have it literally a feeling in my gut, so below my chest and solar plexus, because that, for me, like I said, is more the fear area, where the fear energy comes in. For me, it's like my gut, like my lower abdomen, I'll feel very deep, almost in like the second chakra area. Is just like it comes from a deep place, and it'll be in alignment, with every other kind of part of me, so that when it gets to my head and I'm actually processing it, it feels more like a knowing. It feels like I just know that this is going to be how it's going to come to be, or that this is what's going to happen, or that something is a good opportunity for me, that this is going to be a good outcome. This is going to be in my highest interest. It's a knowing. It's a feeling of just knowing it. So that's hard to describe, because it's going to feel different for everyone. That's my personal experience with it. The other thing about intuition is that it differs from fear in the way that fear will have that kind of self-absorbed, like, I'm not good enough, like, these are my familiar kind of self-criticisms and self-talk that I give myself. Intuition will actually, I've noticed, have a feeling of pushing outward, so the fear will be turning inward, and the intuition will be kind of like leading you somewhere, or like taking your focus and putting it on an external thing, like an opportunity that you have, or something outside of you that it's giving you information on. So that's another way that you can kind of discern the two, is that, you can look at yourself and say, where is my focus being directed? Is my focus being directed inwardly and looking at myself and thinking thoughts about myself? Or is my focus being shown something externally? And again, that's not going to be a hard rule. Like, for some of you, it might be opposite, so this is just my experience. But I wanted to share that because it pretty much always is like that for me. I will be drawn, like, for example, if I'm doing a tarot reading and I'm looking at the cards and my intuition is driving that, part of that is my previous experience. Like I said, intuition is about developing a relationship. It's developing that relationship with yourself. So, you're going to be being led to notice things outside of you. Like, for example, in my example with the cards, I've trained myself to be able to switch my focus away from myself to the information that's in front of me. And then I'm being guided to notice different things about that information, because there's so many ways to interpret any given situation, whether it's a tarot reading or, something in your life. There's basically infinite number of ways to interpret any given thing. So it really is about having that intuitive relationship with yourself where you've developed that. It's like self-training or self-discipline in a way. Not discipline in the sense of punishment or, anything like that, but discipline in the sense of the word disciple, like being a student of yourself, being connected to the experience of all of the past moments where you've had your intuition validated. That's the biggest thing in my experience, is actually having a history, developing that history of trust within yourself, so that it's not like you're just saying, oh, I'm intuitive, but I don't have any like proof for myself about that. It's not that you have to prove yourself to anyone else, but just having that prior relationship of noticing and remembering those times when you've had an intuitive hit and then it was confirmed, that is going to tell you more than any book that you could read on intuition or any, external person, really. It's going to be about you having that relationship with yourself. And everybody has this, nobody was born without the ability to have an intuition. Like, that's the beautiful thing, is we're all intuitive. We just need to unlock and unpack the way that our natural intuition wants to express itself through us. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that this has given you a little bit of clarity on how to discern when you're having fearful thoughts, when you're having an emotional impulse, and when you're actually, having a relationship with your intuition, with that, part of you that comes from a mysterious place, from spirit, and also meets you in your life, where you've trained yourself, you've become a student of yourself. So you're kind of meeting that place of mystery within yourself. So it's an exciting subject for me, and it's probably one of the biggest ones. So I will maybe make more videos on this subject at a later date. But one more thing that I did want to add is that by using different kind of physiological techniques, you can get in touch with this in a more kind of grounded way. This is especially helpful in the beginning. So one of them is muscle testing. So some of you guys have probably done this before, but so you take your thumb and your pointer finger and you make a circle on both sides, and then you take this hand and you push it, and then so what you're going to do is take pressure and separate that kind of connection, if that makes sense. So you're going to look for answers to questions that are they're affirmative. If your thumb and pointer finger stay strong together, that's an affirmative. That's saying a yes. That's an intuitive yes. If it breaks apart and it's flimsy, then that's a no. So you can ask yourself your name. So, is your name Kaylee Jean? Yeah, that's my name. So my muscles are stronger. Is my name Joe? Well, you can see, it kind of just pops open. So this is one way that you can, if you're really struggling and you really just need an answer right away, you don't want to wait a couple days, to find out if it was an impulse and if it changes, or if it was really intuition, or if you're just in a really fearful state and you want an immediate answer. Muscle testing is a great way. You can do this with things especially if you're a creative person, your pricing, check if you're about to release a product, do muscle testing to see if the pricing is right. So let's say you're releasing a product for $100, but you're worried that might be too much. So you could say, okay, well, should it be, 90? Nope. That doesn't feel right. Should it be higher than 100? Should it be 150? Oh no, that doesn't seem to reflect it either. Should it be 100? And then, I kind of set it up so that it would be 100 because I started it with that. So, but this is all just an example to kind of show you how you can use this. And it is your intuition, your muscles, your actual body will tell you if your mind is kind of cluttered, or if you're in a hurry and you don't have time to sit down and meditate and get into this deep place of stillness. Muscle testing is a hugely powerful way to make decisions kind of on the go. I use it all the time. I use it probably almost every day to decide if I should go down any certain route, or if I should buy something at the grocery store. I'll be doing this, so it works for me. And these are tools that I, again, use, and in my view, I use them, successfully. I feel like I have a pretty good relationship with my intuition. I do let it guide me. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts. And then the other kind of tools, I think I already sort of mentioned, but you can meditate and get into a place of stillness if you have time before you make a decision, to see, once you get in that place of stillness, if you still have the impulse, or if you you're not going to be having thoughts if you're in stillness. So, fearful kind of an intuition, not an intuition, but something that's coming from fear is going to be silenced when you're in a place of stillness within yourself. However, if you go into stillness and you still have the intuition of, you know what, no, this isn't a good relationship opportunity for me, or okay, I'm in stillness, I'm not thinking, but I still have this sense that, partnering in this business opportunity is not going to be the right thing for me. That's, all kind of good information for you that, yeah, it is your intuition saying, no, that's not going to be right. It's not going to be a good fit. So that's another way. And then the other thing, of course, is just waiting, a day or two and just seeing how you feel, after that. And that will really be the most helpful if it's actually an impulse instead of intuition. Okay, guys, I hope that was helpful for you in some way, and hope it helps provide clarity as you kind of make decisions and create your life experience for yourself. I also want to mention that I did create a new option for people to do Skype readings with me. It's a little bit cheaper, so it's 45 minutes instead of an hour. And if you're interested, we can cover a lot in 45 minutes. So, it's a really good option for people who want to work with me. And so the information for that will be below the video to my website, where you can check out my schedule and just see a date and time that works for you if you want to work with me more personally. Okay, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you with next month's videos. Bye!